Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Real Talk with Ben podcast. I'm so happy you decided to tune in today. Whatever you're doing, maybe you're just, chilling at home with your dog, with your pal, or maybe you're hanging out with your family, maybe you're just coming home from work. Whatever you're doing, I'm so happy that you decided to tune in. And I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope it brings you some encouragement. And if you're new, my name is Ben, and this is my podcast where I talk about life. I talk about topics that intrigue me. I talk about things that I feel like people might need to know. But ultimately, I just want to glorify God in what I do. And I want to bring some entertainment into your life and maybe some encouragement as well. And so I'm super glad you decided to tune in. And I hope you stay tuned for many episodes to come. So why don't we just jump right into it? But first off, I think it's crazy. This is episode 60, which is always crazy to me. I'm re-situated here. 60 is crazy. I feel like I say that every 10 episodes. Like I said on 40 and then 50, now 60. But it's been a joy for me to do this. And that was very evident last week when I uploaded and I released the podcast with Mishi and I. Honestly, it was a big encouragement to me. And I thank you guys so much. And I thank Mishi for coming on. It's my most listened to episode ever. It's the most watched episode on YouTube ever for me. And it just shows not mainly who I am, and yeah, Mishi's amazing, but really what God is doing through this podcast. And I hope to keep growing it. I hope it grows, and I hope you stay in tune and you really hear maybe not just my heart, but other people that I have on the podcast, and just hear their heart and their love for Christ, which is really important for me. And so, yeah, I just want to get that out of the way at the beginning. But I said a few weeks ago that I would take probably like 2 weeks to talk about kind of my vacation that happened a couple weeks ago. And maybe those stories will come out down the line, but there just seems to be so much going on in this world right now. It almost is overwhelming when I think about it. I think about, I'm an American, so I think about the election that is crucial. It's one of the biggest elections of all time, important elections of all time. I try not to get political on here, so I'm not going to get into that side of things, but it is crucial. And I think whatever side you're on, you can agree that this is a very crucial election. For the future of America. But then also with that, I mean, like yesterday, Ohio State Big Ten football was announced. It's coming back, which is huge for me as a Ohio State fan. And I'm thinking about all the COVID things. We just found out actually that we're going to be able to have all of our students. I know I've been saying that we might only be able to have some of our students. We got permission from the Hungarian government to have all of our students here in different waves. So it's going to be really, really cool. But again, it's crazy. It's busy. I'm editing all the time. And there's so many things that I started to think of this yesterday and today as well. And the reason why I wanted to share this is because I feel like it affects everyone. It's not just here in Hungary that we're feeling it. It's in America. It's in China. It's in Indonesia. It's, in Africa, wherever you are at, you're feeling it. And you're feeling this weight, this craziness of life, and things are always changing. And that's something that I really wanted to talk about, was not necessarily things are changing in a bad way or a good way, but I want us to take this time today on this episode, and something that I have truly felt lately is, how do we find time for God? Or the real question is this: do we actually set aside time for God? Do we actually set aside time for God? This is something that it was brought up to me by a good dear friend, that he said he felt in this moment, in these weeks of, lockdown in the spring, and even times now where things are not the same. They're not what we're used to. He was still struggling to find time to spend it with God. Now, if we're struggling to find time in a crazy time like this, then we need to think about, where are we? You heard Mishi last week talk about his ministry and some of the cool things he got to experience and the things that he's learning and all these different things. And you could see God is very evident in his life. But that doesn't always mean that we are finding daily times to set aside time for God. I know for me, this is a big struggle. This is something that I didn't realize I struggled with until this past week week and a half, when I realized all my focus was just on this craziness. I would look up social media and I would see all these different posts about political stuff. I would see that football rules coming out, things are changing, COVID regulations. I'd watch TikTok. I would do all these things. I could have time for those and I would spend hours on those. But why was I only spending maybe an hour with God? Now, it's something I realized that during quarantine, I wasn't struggling with as much because I had the time. But again, I had the time. Instead of saying we had the time or I had the time, we need to start saying, God, you have my time. And so that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how do we set aside time for God in this world that we live in? I remember a story that I heard in college. I went to Cedarville University, and I heard a story about a young man that was a student at Cedarville, and he had this ability to do really well in school. You know, he was just God-given ability, just being able to memorize things and spew it out. Complete opposite of me. And he was very good, and he was a very good student. But my professor was sharing this story, and he said the student, even though was successful, was a 4.0, was just blown away, tests and everything. He was doing so well. He had a lovely girlfriend. He had everything he could want. But he said he started to feel like he didn't feel good anymore. He started to feel as if he didn't have this love of what he was doing. And what he realized was that his whole life had been proven on this fact of, I'm a Christian, but I am a great student. I'm a great athlete. I have a great girlfriend. And I wonder too, is if sometimes in our own lives, if we are this student, are we this student that is so caught up in this world we live in, is so caught up in this idea that we serve an amazing God, but we only want to live when it is the best for us. We only want to have him a part of our life when it's the best for us. And I think for me, that was something that when he shared that story, I have always remembered, because I have always wanted to be a person that is fully living for God. But at times, I think I slip up. I think that, well, God is so good, I can enjoy my life the way that I want to enjoy it. And yes, that might be true. And yes, it's something that I'm sure we all want to do, is enjoy life. But this story about this student really, it hits me home, because it's a student that thought he had everything. And in this world, according to this world, he has everything. He has everything he wants. He has the best grades. He's probably going to have the best job. He's going to have all these things. But in his mind and in his soul, the Holy Spirit convicted him. He understood that he did not have what he knew he needed to have, which was a true relationship with Christ. And so as this story goes, and as our professor would finish up, and our professor would always tell them these stories, and it was always great. But one thing he did with this story was this. He finished it by saying that this student never realized the importance of a true personal relationship with Christ, never realized what it meant to set aside time daily for Christ. The student, even though, like I said, knew in his heart he needed to be maybe going after Christ more, this student started going the other way, started caring more about what people thought of him. His relationship crumbled. His grades started slipping because he said, I'm so bored. It's so easy for me. I want to do other things. Eventually, this student was committed some sins, then was then told he had to leave Cedarville. You might ask, Ben, where is this student now? And our professor ended it with this. He said, the student now is walking around the streets selling newspapers in New York City because he doesn't have what he thought he had. He saw all this glory, all this amazing things. And when he went back home, he needed to find something else. So he moved to New York City. But life didn't get easier for this student. Life got harder. And our professor told us that when he took a missions trip to New York City to do work with the homeless, he noticed this student was not a part of the mission organization, but was one of the homeless. And our professor looked at us all in the class and said this, that when you take your eyes off Christ and when you start filling it with other things, you truly understand what this world is. It's a fallen place. It's a sinful place. He said, I don't need God. Even though I think in my heart I do, but I don't want him fully. Well, to finish up the story, later find out that this student is now off the streets, selling newspapers, but off the streets, working towards to be a musician in New York City, but came back to Christ and is helping at this ministry that got him to then reconnect with Cedarville. You might ask, Ben, why do you share this story? How does this story impact me? How does this story affect me? Well, friends, this story can impact you by this. You see, the student had everything he wanted, everything that God had gifted with him, but he ignored the fact that God had blessed him with this. God let him walk away. God let him, all these things happen, but then God said, I am always going to be there. And when this student came crawling back to Christ, Christ said, come here, son. Welcome home. So friends, I share that story because I, for many years, and at times still am, that student. I'm a student, not in real life, but I'm that student's attitude. That, well, I only need Christ when things are hard. I only need Christ when I'm struggling with something. But friends, Christ doesn't say to live for me when things are hard. Christ says to live for me when everything is hard, when everything is easy, when things are amazing, when things are bad. He says, live for me and declare my name among the lost, the masses, among the lost people in this world. You might be, Ben, you're a missionary. It can't be that hard to live for Christ every day. Well, Satan attacks a ministry all the time. I know in my own life, there's been things that I struggled with while I'm here, but I have to remind myself of that story. And that's just one story that I've heard over my time. But I also remember a good friend from Cedarville used to tell me this phrase: God never gave up on us when we committed sins. God never gave up on us when we tried to run away from him. So then why are we living a half-priced life, as he would call it? Why don't we go full price and go all the way and push ourselves towards Christ every day? And so to answer that question, do we actually set aside time for God every day? For me, that's something that I really have been convicted about. And I know that I need to do even more. As you know, I'm in a relationship, and Rebecca has been amazing of just challenging me with different things. We talk about spiritual things, theological things, challenge me as a man, challenging me as a person. And for me, that has been a very important thing in my life. Is she has just been so great at that. And I think even because of myself dating her, I've realized that I need to step up my life and my walk with Christ. And it's been so evident that as I've realized that, and as I've focused more on Christ and finding more time to spend with him, it truly has changed my perspective on things. So, you see the Mishis of the world and you see, the Adam and the Donnies and the Ephraims and the Rebeccas of the world that are always, always upbeat about the gospel. But let us remind ourselves that not everyone, just because we're all upbeat, doesn't mean we struggle with things. Let us take time to set aside time for God to work through those things that are behind those closed doors that we might not share with people. And so, friends, family, sometimes I wonder about my own walk. Sometimes I wonder about, am I doing the right things? Am I walking the right way? And that's when I have to dig down, go into God's word and say, this is what I need to live for. Philippians 1:21, which is Dr. White. If you go to Cedarville, he just spoke on this. For me to live as Christ and to die as gain. Friends, no matter where God puts you in this world, whether you're in Taiwan, whether you're in Florida, in Ohio, whether you're in Hungary, whether you're in England, wherever God may put you for the next 60 years of your life, wherever you may be, you are a walking testament of what Jesus has done in your life. Do not waste it and do not act lightly on it. This is not something that you can just choose to be part-time. It's not a part-time job. Living for Christ is a full-time job, a full-time ministry. And no, you don't have to be a missionary to live that out. If you're a teacher, live that out in the classroom with those kids. If you're a parent, be the best parent you can be. And if you're a janitor, do the best you can for Christ and for his glory. One of the best things that my dad ever told me was, son, I'm proud of you because of the man that you will become and the man that you are becoming. Never be satisfied for who you are at that moment. Always try to get closer to Christ. Always try to grow in your walk. So let us not try to find time for God. Let us set aside time for God. Let us take a block of time, whether it's in the morning, whether it's at night, whether it's in the middle of the afternoon, whether it's at your lunch break. But then when you have that free time, maybe not go to TikTok, maybe not watch that movie you've always wanted to watch, but instead take that moment, take that opportunity to then say, maybe I'll go and pray a little bit more. Maybe I'll read this book in the Bible a little bit more. Maybe I'll discover something new about God's word that I haven't realized before. So as we look at this world is full of change. In reality, this world is full of hate, full of anger, full of, it's not good enough for me. Yeah, it may be right. There is a lot of this going around, but I can tell you this, that we serve a God that is in control. We serve a God that is right now, knows exactly what's going to happen 30 days from now, 3 years from now, 30 years from now. And I can tell you this, Jesus is coming home one day. He is coming back. And we're going to be enjoined in heaven with him. And my question to you is are you going to be there with me? Or are you going to be sitting on the sidelines going to hell for eternity because you never accepted the free gift that is just on a platter for you? God is saying, take it. Believe in me. Don't listen to this world, but believe in me. If you're an American, you might be freaking out about this election. I can tell you this, God knows exactly who's going to win that election. God knows exactly who's going to supposed to be in control. But you know what? Let's be honest, they're not in control. God is in control. We serve an amazing God who is always going to be there for each other, for us. So let us live it out. let us truly find our walk with Christ as a thing that we want to do every day. And so as someone here who is finishing up, I have less than 6 months left here in Hungary as a missionary, serving as a missionary. And I've thought about the last 6 months and these next, 5.5 months that I have here in this great country. It's surreal sometimes to think about where God has brought me, the blessings he's given me here. But at the same time, I know that every day I need to act like it's my last day. So I challenge all of you out there to live every day as it might be your last day. So I just want to finish with this. Don't be that student that thought he lost everything because he didn't have these worldly desires, values. But instead, be the second story of that student that lived for Christ, that gives back to his people, and that shares the gospel every day. Be that student. So I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. It's been a blast. It's always a blessing. And if you've enjoyed this episode, why don't you go ahead and favorite this on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. Just make sure it's on that front page so every time I have an episode that comes out, you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to tune in. And if you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and click that listen. I always say listening and watching on YouTube. Go ahead and click that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and then hit that notification bell. That way you can see all the videos that are coming out. I have a lot of things planned that are slowly but surely going to be coming here in the next few weeks, hopefully. So stay tuned. That's where you can catch all my ministry updates and everything like that. And obviously, my Facebook and my Instagram. So stay tuned for those as well for updates. It kind of keeps you in the loop with everything that's going on. So I want to remind you of this. You serve an amazing God, that he is faithful and you can trust him. And as always, we'll see you next time.